Hey guys, I'm gonna be talking about childhood trauma. I have a lot of childhood trauma. No, not in my personal life, just when it comes to the entertainment I watch. You see, there's many reasons why I was such a frightened kid. Mostly because my parents made me watch a lot of fucked up shit. The amount of times my dad made me watch a movie and forgot there was a terrifying scene in the movie, or just didn't realize that the movie was gonna be scary to me because it's a harmless kids movie. The number of times that happened was outstanding. For a whole year, I had to sleep in the same bed as my parents because I was so scared of sleeping alone and hearing bumps in the night. So guys, that's what I'm doing today. I'm talking about 10 movies or TV shows that traumatized me when I was a kid. Guys, one of the biggest TV shows on Cartoon Network when I was a kid was Courage the Cowardly Dog. That show fucked with my head. There's so many scary moments from that TV show. Every person refers to a different episode whenever they talk about something that traumatized them when they were a kid. The one that most people go to, and the one that was the situation for me, was the episode with King Ramses. Picture yourself, you're a young Paul. You have this big drawer in your house and it's full of cassettes. And I had a cassette that I used to watch a lot. It was called Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase. It was like one of those made-for-TV Scooby-Doo movies, but we just so happened to have it on VHS. I pop it in, and you get a funny little cartoon at the beginning of the movie. Courage the Cowardly Dog and King Ramses. No, it's not fun. It's not fun at all. It's the most terrifying movie or show ever. First of all, King Ramses is 3D animated, which is really weird because the whole TV show is 2D animated, so it adds a certain level of uncanniness. His voice is still ingrained in my brain. Return the slab or suffer my curse.
Return the slab or suffer my curse.
And it's just the content of the video too. He's like torturing Coward and his family, and at the end, Eustace's the old man. He's trapped in a tomb for the rest of his life. It just has this really fucked up ending. I really didn't like this episode as a kid. I appreciate it as an adult, but holy cow, did it scare the bejesus out of me when I was a kid. Yikes! Speaking of Scooby-Doo cassettes I had as a kid, another Scooby-Doo cassette I had was Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. This was the scariest Scooby-Doo I've ever seen when I was a kid. Scooby-Doo, it has a very child-friendly premise. There's some spooky ghosts around, but it's always a guy in a mask. The message that it kind of gave to kids was that, listen, there's no such thing as ghosts. There's always a logical explanation to what's going on. It may seem supernatural at first, but have no worries. It's always some guy with a bunch of bad intentions. Wrong. Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, they're real zombies. There's a scene where Fred tries pulling the mask off of one of the zombies, and his head just plucks out. It's scary. And the one scene that fucked with me as a kid, it's my introduction to found footage horror movies, where they find a ghost just lurking in the corner of the kitchen, and they recorded it, and they find one frame in which the ghost appears.
A little, bring up the sharpness a bit, and hey!
It looks like a ghost.
It is the ghost of Morgan Moonscar.
That was some fucking Blair Witch Project shit before Blair Witch Project even came out. Scooby-Doo Zombie Island, ahead of the game, ladies and gentlemen. I'm gonna get all of the obvious ones out of the way first, all the ones that many people have childhood trauma pertaining to. And one of the ones that's all over the internet, and I was no exception to that, was Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure. I don't know why, as a kid, this always played on TV. And the scene that really creeped me out was the Large Marge scene.
And when they finally pulled the driver's body from the twisted, burning wreck, it looked like this.
Goes without saying, a lot of people got afraid of this scene. I was one of them. Really spooky shit. As far as like horror movies I saw as a kid, my dad thought it was appropriate to show me the movie Signs when I was a kid. I watched it pretty close to when it was released, I would say. So I might have been maybe 6, 7, maybe 8. And it really creeped the shit out of me. Because whenever I'd watch the movie, I was just picturing my dad and my uncle in that situation and really relating it to my life a bit too much. A bit more than Mr. Shamhammer expected me to. Just like in that Scooby-Doo Zombie Island movie. The scene that fucked with my head was another found footage kind of horror thing. And it's when the kids in Brazil are having a birthday party and an alien walks in the background like he's fucking Bigfoot.
Move, children! Vámonos!
Está atrás de garage! Está atrás de ahí! It's behind!
Oh!
That scared the bejesus out of me. That was so scary. Wizard of Oz. It's a classic that everyone watched as a kid. I watched it a bunch of times because it was one of my grandma's favorite movies. I used to watch it with my grandma. She had a VHS copy of it, but it was just a VHS copy that was burnt off of cable, so there was like a bunch of commercials in the middle.
I'm your Venus, I'm your fire, your desire.
Introducing Venus from Gillette, the first razor designed to make you feel like a goddess.
The Wizard of Oz is a really scary movie to watch as a kid. The one scene that creeped me out as a kid is when we're introduced to the ruby slippers. The feet kind of just curl backwards like that.
They're gone!
I don't know why. That was the scene that got to me as a kid. Please comment below if you watched Wizard of Oz as a kid. Did that scene fuck with you as a kid? The second scene that comes to mind as scenes that really scared me was the scene where the flying monkeys go to Scarecrow and terrorizes Scarecrow and the other members of the gang, and we see Scarecrow without hay.
My legs off and they threw them over there. Then they took my chest out and they threw it over there.
Well, that's you all over. They sure knocked the stuffings out of you, didn't they?
Don't stand there talking. Put me together.
That's the other scene that creeped me out as a kid because I didn't understand special effects. So to me it looked so real. I was like, oh my god, that's fucking terrifying. I thought like the Scarecrow was actually mashed potatoes. So I kind of established that my dad showed me a lot of movies not thinking it would scare me, but it actually ended up scaring me. I remember as a kid, he had this kind of treasure chest. It was a literal treasure chest, but it was like a crappy one that kept peeling off, like the paint kept peeling off. But I would open it and just grab some of his DVDs and watch them. And one of the DVDs he had was The Day After Tomorrow, which is a Roland Emmerich film. And I remember too, one thing I vividly remember is that the DVD had like this sleeve, and the sleeve was in 3D, and it was the Statue of Liberty frozen. And it felt like it was in 3D, and I used to scratch it as a kid to do that weird sound. Anyway, I watched this movie, and again, I just kept relating it to me, and thinking it would happen to me. And it terrified me. Basically, your generic disaster movie. When I was a kid, that was like the huge thing. Movies like Independence Day, The Day After Tomorrow, Godzilla, the 90s remake. Those were like the big movies when I was a kid. Nowadays, it's superhero movies. Back then, it was disaster movies because it was a new age of CGI and visual effects, and you're able to achieve a bunch of stuff you weren't able to achieve before. So it caused this big boom in disaster movies. Yeah, that movie really messed with my brain because it showed so much damage and it felt so inescapable that I was like, holy shit, are tornadoes real? What am I gonna do? What happens if a tornado lands in Quebec? One moment that really stood out to me when I was a kid was there's this scene where reporters reporting on a storm. And it's so shittily done. Like, I rewatched the clip nowadays. I watch it now and it's just campy because you're like, why the hell is this guy reporting on a tornado like 5 feet away from the tornado? But when I watched it as a kid, I didn't have any rationale to that. So there's this guy reporting the news, yada yada yada, and all of a sudden a billboard is seen rolling towards the reporter and just wipes him out like a rag doll.
Terrifying nightmare! Only this is a real thing!
That's the scene that fucked with me as a kid. Because I always thought you died in a tornado because you get sucked into the eye and you just disappear into space. That's what I thought as a kid. I didn't know, like, something can just go and slap you in the face like that and you just ragdoll uncontrollably. Anyway, that's a bit more of a horror movie, not really a child-friendly movie. But that's not to say I didn't get scared of child-friendly shit. I always got scared. I got scared of everything. I was a big pussy when I was a kid. One thing that scared me as a kid was the Rankin Bass Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer Christmas special. That was terrifying to me as a kid because stop motion animation is already uncanny to begin with. It's not like a very flattering form of animation for the kiddos. It's something you grow a deeper appreciation for when you grow older and more mature, but when you're a kid, you're just like, this feels really off. And that Rankin Bass Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer movie was one of those. Rudolph didn't scare me. I wasn't that much of a pussy. What scared me was the fucking Yeti. You're introduced to this guy, and he just has the biggest derp face of all time. He's smiling like he knows something that you don't, and he releases the biggest Godzilla roar you can possibly release. And he's so fucking big. But you watch it now, and it's so obvious it's a stop-motion animation film. The perspective is all off. But when you're a kid, this guy's the biggest fucking creepiest thing ever. Speaking of animated movies for kids, Finding Nemo was a big movie when I was a kid. One of the most popular movies from my childhood. Everyone was taking their families to go see Finding Nemo, the latest Pixar animated classic. Now, it wasn't a scary movie at all. But the one thing that did fuck with my brain was the damn anglerfish. I had to look that up. For those of you who don't know what's an anglerfish, or however you say it, it's that fish with a fucking lantern on its head. I always just called it the lanternfish. Apparently it has a name. The design of it is so creepy. I watched Jaws as a kid. This movie scared me more than Jaws. Explain that, I don't know.
I'm gonna get you.
I'm gonna swim with you.
I'm gonna get you.
I'm gonna be your best friend. Good feelings gone.
And as if the scene is not scary enough, what does the movie do? You watch the end credits, and nowadays, at the end of a movie, they'll put maybe Nick Fury, they'll put Morbius, or whoever the latest cool superhero is. Not when I was a kid. They intentionally put the one thing they know is gonna creep the shit out of children. They put that in the end credits. That was like the creators at Pixar like, fuck you kids, get scared motherfuckers. Yeah, they put the fucking fish at the end credits. As if I didn't have enough. As if I wasn't sweating enough already, they have to do that creepy ass shit to me. That was back in the days where Pixar had a nutsack, I tell you. Spielberg, he made a lot of movies that creeped out children. One of the movies I used to watch as a kid was all 3 Indiana Jones movies. And my dad, whenever we'd watch Temple of Doom, he would skip over a scene. And I'd be like, why is he doing that? Until one day I figured out how to use the DVD player. And what did I do? I immediately put Temple of Doom in the DVD player and skipped to that scene. But that's not the thing that scared me the most as a kid. That was pretty creepy. That wasn't the most creepy Spielberg moment from my childhood. The most creepy Spielberg moment from my childhood was White E.T. I don't know why. white E.T. was so disturbing. And it's weird, I wasn't afraid of brown E.T. I was slightly afraid of E.T. in drag. I will admit it. E.T. in drag did fuck with my head a little bit. Now, was that some early implanted transphobia from this patriarchal society? Probably. I don't care. I was scared of E.T. in drag, but the S tier of the creepy E.T. chart list was white E.T. E.T. in whiteface. I don't know why. It was so scary to me. Maybe it's because he was sick and ill, and when you're a kid, you don't expect your childhood protagonist to get sick and ill and on the verge of dying. Guys, you're gonna laugh at me for this one. As you may know, white people scared me as a kid. Now I'm white, I'm pretty pasty. But when you go full ghostly white, that scares me. And in my childhood, there was no whiter person than Michael Jackson. Bear in mind, I was alive post-plastic surgery. That's the Michael I knew growing up. I remember my earliest memory of Michael Jackson was him dangling a kid off a balcony. And it was all over the news. They didn't put a trigger warning or anything. Now, they didn't need to put a trigger warning because he's putting a kid's life at risk. That's not what I'm saying. They should have put a trigger warning because Michael Jackson was scary. Now, picture old Polster with this implanted fear of Michael Jackson in his head. He watches Scary Movie 3, thinking it's gonna be a light-hearted comedy. And who pops up in the fucking movie? Michael Jackson!
There's plenty of room under the covers. It's a hot night. You don't need to wear pajamas.
Where is my daughter?
Are you mad? I am your daughter.
No, you're not. Come here. What did you do with Sue?
I didn't touch her, I swear.
I saw that movie way before I knew what The Others was, the movie it was parodying with Nicole Kidman. And when I watched The Others, it wasn't even scary. I got more scared of the Michael Jackson parody version in Scary Movie 3 than of the actual horror movie. And I'm sure that was the situation with a lot of people that watched Scary Movie growing up, is they didn't understand it was a parody movie, and when they replicate horror movie elements, they got scared of the actual horror movie elements they were borrowing from rather than just looking at it as parody. I'm sure a lot of people have been in that situation, but for me, it was fucking Michael Jackson. Scary ass motherfucker. And a pedophile. Guys, I was scared of Michael Jackson before I knew he was a pedophile. Good thing I didn't have that understanding as a child to know what Michael Jackson just might do to me. I just thought he was scary looking. Had I known he's a child molester, I would never get some shut-eye. I probably wouldn't even be here today. I would have died of chronic exhaustion at age 5. Alright, that's enough. I'll see you guys. Take care.